Welcome to day one of Digital Inertia, where we are talking all about ways we can make sure this forward motion, this momentum that we have gained in the digital world stays as our physical world begins to reopen. So today we're going to talk about two things we need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen, to make sure that we don't backtrack. The first is to acknowledge, and the second is to adapt. So when I say acknowledge, I'm basically calling you out. What we were doing wasn't working. Looking at digital, whether it was our website or our social media strategy, as secondary or inferior, was wrong. Looking at it as just something we can do on the fringes or something we can put on the back burner and get to when we get to wasn't working. Now more than ever, we see the need for a true, strategic, intentional digital plan for organizations of any kind, whether you are a church or a ministry or a small business owner or a huge corporation trying to sell products or services direct to consumers or to other businesses. You need a digital strategy. You need a website that people can easily navigate, that people can understand your mission and vision with simple, clear, and concise copy, and you need to be on social media. We no longer have the luxury as churches, as ministries, as businesses, as small businesses, as large corporations, we no longer have the luxury to not be on social media. In fact, in mid-March, as all of the stay-at-home orders were kind of being rolled out and cemented, social media, so when I say social media here, I mean Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we are not talking about the huge explosion that we've seen and can continue to see on TikTok. But those three platforms specifically saw a 40% increase in users and time on the app. 40%. People weren't out in their physical spaces. They were living primarily in digital worlds, and the usership just blew up on these apps. So as we transition back into the physical world, as people may or may not have less time to kind of dawdle on these apps, what does that look like? What does our digital strategy look like? Do we go back to how it was? Do we stay where we are? What does that look like? So again, acknowledge that what we were doing, going back to that, is probably not the answer. That's not what's going to keep us moving forward in this digital space. The second is we need to adapt. Now, when I say adapt here, here's really what I'm thinking of. A lot of people right now in many organizations have had the bandwidth, the time, the energy to become digital creators. Now, whether that means you're working in ministry and you are churning out some sort of ministry content, or it means you are in B2B marketing and you are churning out marketing copy or sales copy, or you are in some sort of consulting and you are no longer meeting one-on-one face-to-face, so you're putting together white papers and digital resources for your clients and prospects. You've had the space, you've had the bandwidth to do this in a digital capacity. What happens when we go back to our physical world? What happens when those typical or normal roles and responsibilities resume? Who is picking up that digital slack? So what companies, organizations, churches, ministries are going to need to do is to adapt their resources. Now, whether that means allocating more financial resources to digital, or reorganizing personnel, or bringing on more personnel to continue to forge ahead in that capacity, or whether it means partnering with an outside consultant or an outside agency to move ahead, the reality is we're going to have to adapt our resources, and we are also going to probably have to adapt our methods. So going back to, again, that user spike that we saw in social media in mid-March. So we saw that 40% spike on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram aggregately. Again, people had time. People were home. People were consuming more content digitally because they weren't out consuming content in their physical worlds. So what does that look like when people have less time, right? How does our content strategy switch? Does it? Should it? So the answer is yes. I'm telling you that our content strategy will need to shift. We need to adapt in that capacity. Otherwise, we're just going to get left in the dust again. So we can't get too comfortable there either. So digital inertia, the first two steps on making sure we keep moving forward are acknowledging that what we were doing wasn't working. It's not going to work when we go back, and adapt. Adapt our resources and adapt our methods. So that's the first installment of Digital Inertia. I hope it was to you, and I hope you tune back tomorrow.